Welcome to The Life of Hair. My name is James Atkinson. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode. Now, in this week's episode, it's one of those videos what I've been meaning to do for quite a while, but I feel like it's got more and more important in recent times. This particular technique is one of those techniques that is massively underrated, underused, and lots of people are scared of this technique. And when you see it, you'll know exactly what I'm saying. But it's an invisible layering technique. And of course, obviously, with the advent of balayage techniques in terms of colour and lived in blondes, we're seeing a lot more one length hair cuts. Now, that isn't a problem, but obviously it leaves you with limited options of removing weight, debulking, creating volume. All sorts of problems occur when we just leave everyone's hair with a one length. And of course, if you put layers into a balayage, it becomes very difficult then to balayage the hair subsequently to layering the hair. Now, I think we are going to see the increase in layered haircuts coming through, but that is going to create very tricky balayages for people, especially if the hair becomes over layered. So the invisible layer technique, and of course when you get to see it yourself, it's not rocket science. It is a great, fundamental, easy to do technique that I know you're going to love once you've had a little bit of practice. Now, I'm not going to allude to it anymore. I'm going to get straight on with the video. Before I get on with the video, just a big thank you to everybody who tunes in every single week, hits that thumbs up button, subscribes, and chats to me in the comments. They are massively appreciated, and I try my best to get back to you guys as and when I can. There's lots of comments that come through these days, but I will do my best for you. And a massive thank you to my Patreons. You guys absolutely rock. There's 110 Patreons at the moment, and it has been an absolute breath of fresh air to have that personal connection with you guys. And there's a big announcement coming over on the Patreon page very soon about a new way of us connecting. I've alluded to it already to the Patreons, but I'm very happy to bring it to life for you. So look forward to telling you all about that very soon. So let's get on with today's video. Have a wonderful week. Stay safe, stay sane, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay, super simple pre-section on this one. Now, I'll probably cut my one length in before I do this technique, so bear that in mind. If you're going to do your one length, then I would probably do it first. So in this instance, we've cut our one length in, and we've simply subdivided the hair into two, straight down the centre, down towards the nape, and then we're going to go roughly from the bottom of the occipital bone, take a 45-degree diagonal. And for anybody that knows what diagonals do, write it in the comments box right now. What do diagonals do? And for anybody that's not sure, diagonals enhance softness. So this will help to seamlessly blend in the invisible layers. So we're taking a 45-degree diagonal from the bottom of the occipital bone down towards the left-hand nape here. And we are removing hair, cutting vertically down the hair. Now, I've done a very similar video to this previously on a bob shape, and everybody was like, oh my god, this is very scary. There's lots of views on that video, and people, either terrified or thrilled to see such a technique. But in the grand scheme of this particular technique, there are some very important things to bear in mind, which I'm going to talk you through as we go through the technique. Now, we're onto our second section already, so it's quite a quick technique, and we will be working in the back separate to the front. So effectively, we'll end up with a section that runs from the highest point of the head down to the back of the ear. Where the hairline changes density due to the hair going up and around the ear. Remember that the hair changes density. It's almost double as thick in the back as it is in the front, and that's true with everybody's hair unless they've got an undercut at the back. Now, you'll notice a few little details if I point them out to you, and you may have already spotted them. If you have, kudos to you. But one of the things that I'm doing here is I'm being very delicate. I'm making sure the hair is combed in exactly the same direction. So I'm combing the sections through, and I'm removing the hair as I go. I'm not kind of cutting and getting carried away and then combing through and realizing I've removed 50% of the hair. I'm cutting a few slithers with my scissors absolutely parallel to the hair. Now that's very, very important when we do this technique. We don't want to remove a huge amount of hair. We want to remove a very small amount of hair at a time as we work through the technique. So it is a wonderful technique to do. It's one that I highly recommend you practice. And if you're feeling a bit scared of it, then there is no time like the present to get involved with this technique. Now, the thing that I would mention most of all here is where and how we take the weight away from the hair. So traditional thinning techniques where we elevate the hair and we point cut the ends will only remove weight from the ends of the hair. This particular technique kind of creates volume, movement and texture, and it is completely invisible within the hair. Now, I know a lot of people, when I did my previous video, said, I wish you'd have dried it straight. Well, you're in luck. At the end of this video, I dried it straight for everyone to see that, you know, there's not all these thousands of hairs sticking out from the head everywhere. It's very, very simple and easy for you to do and repeat. Obviously, it's not a technique that you probably need to do every single time, certainly not towards the ends of the hair. But you'll notice in this particular instance, it was a long time since I cut my client's hair, and I needed to do it from the ends and from the middle ends because we'd come out of lockdown, hadn't cut our hair for probably the best part of a year, so it definitely needed that extra bit of oomph. So go through, work through your ends first, probably the bottom third, within the bottom third of the hair, and then move up to the second third and then work through again, leaving about 1 centimetre to kind of 1 inch gaps in between each of the sections. Super, super important. So in the instance of this technique being done, you can see now we're going to take this section from the highest point of the head and we're going to over direct the hair backwards. And over direction will increase the softness. So it's going to help us to create a much, much softer look. So I'm just going to jump in here really, really quickly and give you a recap and show you the exact technique here right now. Now, so the things we need to remember is we'll subdivide the hair into 2 through the center back. We're going to take a 45-degree angle from the occipital bone down towards the corner of the nape. We're going to comb the hair straight down, making sure there's no knots or the hair isn't tangled, so it's nice and smooth. We're then going to place our scissors vertically into the hair. And we are going to gently, using the heel of the scissor, open and close the scissor like this. But we are not going to do this. Chop, chop, chop. We're just gently going to work our way down the hair using very, very small snips. We'll then comb the section through, having just done the bottom third, should it need it. If this is the second or third or fourth time you've done this, it's very unlikely that you'll need to do the ends again. Once we've done the ends and we're happy with the density we've removed from the ends, we then move up to the middle third on the head. And then we do exactly the same thing. Now remember, that hair is going to grow down towards the ends, and this is why we don't need to keep repeating the process on the ends of the hair. Here's the thing. We need to follow the rules of this technique very, very closely. It can be used on any hair length, any hair type. I'm doing it on wet hair. Wet hair will remove more hair than if we did this technique on dry hair. So bear that in mind. You may want to practice this on dry hair because you will remove less hair because the hair doesn't clump together because it's not wet. It's not rocket science, but if you don't know, you don't know. So it's good to point these things out. So work on the ends, work in the middle ends, comb your sections through, feel the hair. Make sure that you know how much hair you have removed from the head before you move on. We're always going to then come up to the high point of the head and over direct that hair back again to increase the softness, because that is not where that hair lives. It doesn't live back here generally, it lives down here somewhere. And that's going to help us again remove some of the weight and increase the softness. Very, very, very important to remember. Now the final thing to remember, which is also super important, is the way that we pick up the hair with our comb. And what we don't want to do is keep picking up the section beneath. So when we take our first section, of course, do what we like. But our second section, when we take our 45-degree angle, once we've got that hair combed down, we use the teeth of the comb. We're going to put the teeth of the comb into the hair vertically, straight down towards the floor. We're then going to tilt the comb towards us. This will help to pick up the hair. We'll then just lift the hair away from the head, and this will separate the two sections. Roughly, doesn't need to be perfect, but it won't pick up as much of the hair from the underneath, and therefore we don't have that kind of cutting each section multiple times problem that can occur if we're not careful. So when we take our second section, diagonal line, we pick up the hair, and then we put it in our hand, and we make sure we comb it through, and then we cut vertically down the hair. Super simple, but some things that you just definitely need to follow. Back with the last part of this video, and then we'll wrap it up. So moving on to the top sections or the side sections, depending on the density of the hair. Remember, the sides are much, much thinner than the top always. The one thing that we do need to bear in mind is that you may only need to do the top section. You split it into a center parting. I would recommend that you do it in a center parting so you can get even balance. You put your comb in, you comb down a little bit, you pick it up, and whatever you pick up in the comb is probably the hair that I would thin out. If they've got loads and loads of really, really abundant hair, then of course, be my guest, you can split that section into two. So this section, I'd probably only be working in two sections because the hair around here tends to be weaker and finer anyway, and there tends not to be as much density. But if there is, then be my guest and go for slightly smaller sections. You can use diagonal sections in this underneath part of the head, but bear in mind that when you come to the top, there's a high chance that you're going to be using a horizontal section. When you're using a horizontal section, you have to be even more careful that you're only closing the scissor a tiny little bit and removing very small pieces of hair as not to create unsightly pieces in the head. So this is the finished result of the haircut, and as you can see, just looks super, super natural. But there's loads of weight removed from this hair. It's a lot less dense, it's a lot less bulky, especially through those mid-lengths and towards the ends, and even right up 2/3 of the way up the head. So this really, really will help the manageability of my client's hair. And as you can see, there's not millions of hairs poking out all over the place. And some people then come in and will say, well, what about, how do we go back and trim those ends when they get split? As long as your client's looking after their hair and they're maybe using a split end salve cream or something similar, then there's no reason that we should have really high quantity of split ends. But in another episode, I'm going to show you how you can go through and cut those split ends. And as I'm not doing hair right now in the salon, and I really need to do this on a client, I won't be making it for a few weeks. But when I do get back in the salon, hopefully on the 12th of April here in the UK, and I won't be back until the 15th, but when I'm back in the salon, if I have the opportunity to show you how to cut away those split ends, if it happens, then I very much look forward to you joining me in that episode. And until then, look after yourself, have a wonderful week, and I'll see you again for another episode of The Life of Hair very, very soon.